book of Esther. And we kind of reached the crisis point of the book of Esther. We talked about how she became queen and how she had Mordecai, her relative, was in some kind of responsible position there and had saved the king's life. And we talked about the bad guy of Esther, who was Haman. He was resentful of Mordecai and had got the king to agree that all the Jews in the whole Persian Empire would be destroyed. And Mordecai wanted Esther to plead for the people, the Jews, with the king. And she was at first a little hesitant, but finally Mordecai convinced her by saying, maybe you've been put in the position where you are as queen for that very purpose, to do something for your people. But we noted that it's interesting that the book of Esther doesn't contain the name of God. And it's also interesting that when the Hebrew text was translated into Greek, that somebody didn't like that. And so they added, how many verses? 107 verses to the book of Esther, mostly focusing on God. And so I happen to have an English translation of that book of Esther, which included all those extra verses. And I thought you might like to hear a few of them. And maybe this is based on an oral tradition. Maybe somebody just made it up. It's not anywhere in print until just, like 100 and some BC, whereas these events are happening 400 and some BC. But anyway.
So was it Greek? Was it a different language, these extra, or no?
Yes.
Yes.
The Hebrew text, when it was translated into Greek, they added 107 verses. In Greek.
Oh.
So we don't have these, there's no earlier version of the extended Esther, or what's called the rest of Esther. And so, but as I mentioned last time, all of these extra verses were printed separately in the first edition of the King James Bible. And some of the Bibles, you find the Catholic Bibles include this stuff. But anyway, I just thought you'd be interested in a few of these verses. This is when Mordecai found out that the Jews were going to be destroyed. And see, it's Mardochaius in Greek. Mordecaius prayed to the Lord, calling to mind all the works of the Lord. He said, O Lord, Lord, and King who rulest over all, because the whole world is under thy authority. And when it is thy will to save Israel, there is no one who could stand against thee. And it just goes on and on. It's a very lengthy prayer. And that Mordecai prayed according to this version. Ends up, do not disdain thine own possession, which thou didst ransom for thyself out of Egypt. It's a very, even in this so-called modern version, it's a very poetic prayer. Hear my prayer and have mercy on thy heritage, and turn our mourning into feasting, that we may live and sing of thy name. And here, then the next chapter, Esther, we know that she said, give me some time to think about it, and I'll go to the king. A fast for me. But this extra verses say, then Queen Esther, caught up in this deadly conflict, took refuge in the Lord. She stripped off her splendid attire and put on the garb of mourning and distress. Instead of proud perfumes, she strewed ashes and dung over her head. She abased her body, and every part that she had delightfully adorned, she covered with her disheveled hair. And so she prayed to the Lord God of Israel. And then it gives a long prayer of Esther, many verses. We won't read all of that, but save us by thy power, and help me who am alone and have no helper but thee, Lord. Thou knowest all. Thou knowest that I hate the splendor of the heathen. I abhor the bed of the uncircumcised or of any Gentile. So they're getting really, thou knowest in what straits I am. I loathe that symbol of pride, the headdress that I wear when I show myself abroad. I don't know. That's what these words say. I loathe it as one loathes a filthy rag, and so on. Anyway, then going forward, we know what happened. She appeared before the king, and what happened? He held out his scepter to her so that she might not die. And he said, Esther, what do you want? Up to half my kingdom. That was kind of a saying that they used in that time. Here's the way that the Greek text puts it. On the third day, Esther brought her prayers to an end. She took off the clothes she had worn while she worshiped and put on all her splendor. When she was in her royal robes and had invoked the all-seeing God, her preserver, she took two maids with her. On one she leaned for support, as befitted a fine lady, while the other followed. She was blushing and in the height of her beauty. Sounds like a Hollywood. Her face was as cheerful as it was lovely, but her heart was in the group of fear. She passed through all the doors and reached the royal presence. The king was seated on his throne in the full array of his majesty. He was all gold and precious stones, an awe-inspiring figure. He looked up, his face glowing with regal dignity, and glanced at her in towering anger. The queen glanced at her. The queen fell, changing color in a faint, and swooning on the shoulder of the maid who went before her. Then God changed the spirit of the king to gentleness, and in deep concern, he leaped from his throne and took her in his arms until she came to herself. He smoothed her with reassuring words. Esther, what is it? Have no fear of me, your loving husband. You shall not die, for our order is only for our subjects. Come to me. And he lifted his golden scepter and so on. So that gives you some idea of the, it's as if it was written by, as I say, a Hollywood screenwriter. And anyway, Esther swooning has always stuck with me after I read these verses. That may be somewhat how it happened. It may not. So that's all we can say about that. But I thought it's kind of interesting. So
where does it cut off then? Does it?
Oh, it goes on.
Okay.
What do you mean?
Does it take it all the way through? No, because at some point then we get the story of Haman and all that.
Yeah. Those are the main areas where they've added verses to make it clear that it was God, and that there's some verses that are added later, but not as many. Mostly they've added the verses to focus on God and prayers. Those prayers are quite long. Anyway, those are the ones that impress me the most.
So what do the Jews do with that now?
I think they probably use, I don't know. It's about, I don't know what they use when they have the Feast of Purim, if they use the extra verses. I mean,
I was there, but I don't remember them.
they would say that the Septuagint is inspired, but because they say that the 70 translators must have come up with this identical. Actually, they didn't have 7. The story again is that 70 scholars translated from Hebrew into Greek, all alone, each one in his own room or place. And then when they compared the Greek manuscripts, they were identical. And that showed that God was with them. Well, that's not exactly the way it is. That's the legend. But anyway.
So the chance of all 70 coming up with, well, there was an original, wait, it was Greek, so there was no translating going on.
What now?
This part, right.
That's right. Well, no, this part didn't exist before the Septuagint version. Somebody came up with that language and included it in Esther. Different, after this verse, they inserted a prayer. After this verse, they inserted other material. So it's called the Apocrypha.
It's categorized as Apocrypha. And it takes it as the rest of the book of Esther. Because if you look inside this Bible, Ethiopian Bible, we contain 88 chapters. 88 chapters. You will find it in the Ethiopian Bible, the English. Yeah.
88 chapters.
Wow.
I thought they could just out of it. I was just kind of getting ready for the book of Job, and which is the next book in the scriptures. And here in Esther, the Septuagint is longer than the Hebrew version because they've added those verses. Job, we're kind of jumping ahead of ourselves, contains some very difficult Hebrew language. They found it difficult to come to an agreement on how it should be translated, which may suggest that the Hebrew in the book of Job is of more ancient vintage. And that's why a lot of people think Job is a very early book. But the Septuagint translation of Job is much shorter than the Hebrew translation. And I wrote that down somewhere, because they omitted 400 lines, not 400 verses, but this Septuagint is 400 lines longer than the Greek text, because what we can posit is that as they were translating from Hebrew into Greek, if they couldn't really agree on what a verse said or meant, they left it out. So anyway, it's funny that way. How you think the translators from language that was considered inspired by God would be extremely careful, but they weren't. So if you get your Greek text, it's quite different, at least in these books. So anyway, we'll talk more about that when we get to Job. Anyway, the book of Esther, we talked about Esther's response, how originally she said, it's not my job. But she finally realized I'm in a position where I could do something. And that's something we sometimes think, well, it'd be nice if somebody else would do that. But maybe God has put us there for that purpose. And maybe you're not going to save a nation of people like the Jews, but there's people in the lives of each one of us that we know nobody else knows. None of the others of the church know. And maybe God has put us in those people's lives to touch their lives for Jesus. And so that's something to consider. We talked about Mordecai changed her mind, whether or not he talked explicitly about God. We're not told that he did. We're told that the king did offer Esther the scepter, and so her life was saved. And what did Esther ask for when the king offered her up to half of the kingdom? What did she ask for?
She asks that the king and Haman come to a banquet.
Come to dinner. Come to dinner. I don't know to what extent she had all this planned out, but it seems like she's trying to get the king in a good mood. Because when they had that dinner and Haman was all puffed up, I was the only guy who was invited. And her next request was, come back tomorrow for dinner. And that's when the great irony of the book occurs, because what happens between those two dinners?
Is it not possible that Haman rather is, playing with Haman? He made Haman to feel comfortable, feel happy in the moment that he will bring the issue up.
Yeah.
So that he will not be aware of what is coming.
Haman was kind of a strange man. He's puffed up, but he's abased. His pride is nullified because, remember, the king can't sleep. So he calls for them to read some of the old records. I don't know what you read if you can't sleep, if you read old history books.
That put you to sleep.
Anyway, again, we can say, maybe that was the Lord. So anyway, he finds out that Mordecai has saved his life by revealing a plot against his life. He says, what's been done for Mordecai? Nothing. So he decides to honor Mordecai, and he calls Haman in the next day. What can I do to the man that I want to honor? And of course, Haman thinks, well, it's me. But it's not.
Kind of sad.
It is. But that's kind of the ultimate in irony. It kind of is like a novel there. And so Haman comes up with all this stuff. I'd put a cloak on him and lead him through the city, saying, this is the man that the king wants to honor. And then the king says, Haman, do that for Mordecai. Oh man, that must have hurt.
Yeah.
But he did it.
Yeah.
He didn't have a choice.
But it's interesting. Then he starts talking to his wife, and she says, that things aren't good, Haman. That's that's a bad luck sign. So poor Haman. But in the meantime, he's built a gallows, 50 feet high or 50 cubits, and which is pretty high, to show off his execution of Mordecai when they go after the Jews. And so that's another item that's going to be turned to a different use. Because what the second dinner they have at the king's palace, Haman is there. And after the king has had something to eat and drink, I'm sure, she says, what do you want? And Esther, what will you have, Esther? Up to half the kingdom. I don't know if anybody ever said, well, I'll take half the kingdom.
I know, right?
But maybe they knew better than that. And she said, well, there's a plot against Jews, my people. She hadn't told that she was a Jew. And the king says, who's doing this? And she points the finger at Haman. And the king is so upset that he leaves the room. But Haman then falls on the queen's bed, begging for mercy. And just at that instant, again, sounds like a Hollywood writer, the king comes in, Haman is fallen on the bed. Oh, he's trying to assault the king, the queen, right here in the palace.
That's why I thought something wrong with that king. Why would he think that? It's just stupid. Why would, anyway.
Well, he's got women on his mind.
There's nothing wrong with it. You see, even these days, if somebody is in Haman position and somebody is in Mordecai position, this thing will happen. If these days, the fellow, whoever is in Haman position will behave that way.
Yeah, Haman would, but why would the king think he's trying to assault his wife?
Yeah.
That's how God wants to. That's the reason why God is using him.
Yeah, he uses people to imagine insurance.
Yeah. It make him look like he's confused of whatever he's doing. He don't even know what is right from wrong at the moment.
Yeah.
That's how it
Yeah,
goes.
Haman just out of control. He didn't know what to do. Big was like,
Yeah. But it didn't work
nope.
because the king said Haman is going to die on the gallows that he had built for Mordecai. And so he's disposed of, and the bad guy is gone. But the problem still is that the king has decreed and sent out messengers throughout all the provinces of his empire, giving authority for the Jews to be destroyed and killed. What could he do about that? Can't repeal, because under Persian law, you couldn't repeal a law. Now, what kind of
law is that?
well, that was the tradition of the Medes and the Persians.
They have tradition.
We run across that in Daniel also, that it is condemnation to the lion's den could not be repealed, but same thing here. But so how do they get around that?
He made a second edict that the Jews were allowed to defend themselves.
Okay,
That was the second best they could do.
that's the best he thought he could think of, and his advisors could think of.
And they did defend themselves.
Yeah.
And they survived
Yes. So
to this day.
what happened is kind of the governors of the provinces, they caught the message that the wind had turned from being against the Jews to being for the Jews. So they, kind of didn't interfere when the Jews did defend themselves. And the result was what? In the capital, the 300 people were killed by the Jews. In the whole of the Persian
By
Empire.
the Jews?
Was
You
it?
said by the Jews.
I think so, yes.
Yeah,
Chapter
300
9,
of them?
chapter 9, verse 5. Esther 9, 5. I mean, unless some of the governors, I don't think they would use troops. I'll get it. It's a great detail. Well, the Jews struck down all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them, and they did what they pleased to those who hated them. In the citadel of Susa, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men. They also killed the sons of Haman. He had 10 sons. The number of those slain in Susa, then it goes down into verse 16. Meanwhile, the remainder of the Jews who were in the king's provinces also assembled to protect themselves and get relief from their enemies. They killed 75,000 of them, but did not lay their hands on the plunder. This happened on 2 different days, so the feast technically was a 2-day feast. Anyway, so 75,000. So there were a lot of people that rose up against the Jews that got killed.
I find this always disturbs me that, you know, just because Haman made this thing, you know, that where these people were supposed to kill the Jews, why were people so willing to do that? You know
Because
what I
they can
mean?
get their stuff.
That there would be people who, I mean, what had the Jews done to them? Probably nothing, except that they existed.
Yeah.
And so
It's anti-Semitism.
Haman said that, well, I know.
Been around
And
the
the
world.
thing is, you see that pattern repeated
Yes.
throughout history, you know, the Spanish Inquisition,
Yes.
the persecution, and then the Crusades, and of course, Hitler's Holocaust.
Still out there. Still out there.
And now, again, we see anti-Semitism recurring
Yeah.
in our country, where, you know, you think, why do people react that way to the Jew? It's just so disturbing to me that even after reading these things and you know, you would think that we had made progress in accepting people's differences rather than, you know, lashing out against them, blaming them. Oh, you know, they're doing this and makes the world a bad. It's just, makes me angry. Mainly, my grandchildren are they're considered Jewish because their mother is Jewish, and that they, you know, might face some kind of
Someday they might feel a bad
hatred
way.
in the future because of that. It's just,
I think Patrick hit on it this morning, though. He said fear, you know, makes us do negative things towards other people. He did mention that.
but what
And
is
that-
there to fear?
There's always
The
fear,
Jews
people
were in the
fear
minority.
economic problems, political takeover. There's always fear moving around, it seems like, in people, and they always look for a scapegoat, and that's been the Jews.
That's that, and why is that? Because the Jewish people were kind of separatists. They did. If you were an Orthodox Jew, you didn't participate in the worship of the emperor or the other gods, and so you kind of that.
They're different.
They were
They're
different. That's right.
They don't like that.
In the same way, people in power don't like Christians because Christians have an allegiance to someone other than the state,
Right.
other than the dictator. And Christians are persecuted in places where there is a dictatorship like China and Iran, a bunch of the Arab world. What else as we get, I don't know about this, what else do we find as we get into the Middle Ages in Spain and Germany? The Jews, what was one of their occupations?
Money
Money lender.
They're good with money.
Why? Because under the old law, the Jews weren't supposed to charge interest to other Jews. So as Christianity developed, that principle was applied among Christians. Therefore, they needed someone from whom they could borrow money.
Yeah.
So the Jews were there. They could borrow money from the Jews. And so there was a resentment because the Jews charged interest and were low, especially in Spain. In Germany, if you listen to the speeches of the Nazis, there's a lot of mention of Jewish bankers. Rothschilds were symbolic of the moneylenders of the 30s and 40s. Anyway, I don't know if there's money lending going on back here, but that's one of the reasons that has led to persecution over the centuries, because it persists today because the Jews want a homeland and they want to protect that homeland. And
They're still perceived as being kind of greedy for some reason, I don't know why.
Trying to take everything from the
Because of money.
Palestinians.
that's
I don't think all of them are, but some of them are, but some of us are greedy too.
that's
Well,
right.
that's
That's
not
part
fair.
of
That's
anti-Semitism.
a fair characteristic and
But
characterization.
mostly it's
It's
the
a stereotype. It's not
Stereotype.
fair.
Well, I think it's unfair, but
the
they're
separatism.
seen that way by a lot of people.
Anyway,
I like to say one thing about Haman.
sure.
He is compared by scholars to Hitler directly because of his hatred and his desire to eliminate
Yeah.
all the Jews he could possibly eliminate. He's a Hitler kind of person, that's all I'd say.
Yeah.
So think of him as kind of a Hitler.
Yeah,
His day,
that's right. That's right.
Hitler took it to an extreme, so did he.
Hitler is the head of state, but he is not the head of state. But
God is there.
yeah, as for Hitler, he's the head of state. His command work, like a decree, he filled the degree. Not only Persia did not repeal a decree, even Roman don't repeal a decree when they make a decree. The commander, they promise that this is what I will do before you. When the thing turn out, they can't repeal it.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah,
who came up with that?
you can see before Herod and John the Baptist, when the daughter requested Herod John head, he pains Herod, but he can't repeal
Can't
it.
they say no?
Exactly.
What's that?
They don't say no. Is it the problem?
He can't say no because he has already promised. See?
Were you the one who said that this king, whatever anybody said, he said, okay.
He seems
That's
to
what
be
I'm
kind of a yes man.
He doesn't even ask, why do you want to do
Yeah.
this? What is your grievance? I mean, he just, okay, sure. go ahead.
Maybe he was not smartest, I don't know. Yeah.
That's right.
Something wrong with the upside.
Reading, I'm sure.
Okay.
So
Maybe that showed God's working more so, that this will seem like an impossible situation.
well, we'll maybe just say a word or two next time before we get into the book of Job, but we will pass out the Job questions.
Oh, wait, someone's gonna teach next week?
Oh, we're going to be in St. Louis next week. So
I'm gonna be in Wilmette, so I'm gonna be here. My
we're
nephew's
Going on in Wilmette.
My nephew's preaching there,
oh,
so he wants me to come to support him. So I'm going in next week.
yeah. Well, should we pass this out or hold off? What do you think you guys will do, Dan? You want to just take something completely?
Pass them out.
Or do you want to just do something different?
Barbara, does he normally preach somewhere?
He's preached there about his fourth time,
Oh.
you know, and they let him initially because, you know, my sister used to go there. And they remembered
We'll
him.
pass on.
Cynthia, yeah.
Let Dan think
So
about
he
what
wants
you
be a
wanna do.
preacher, so-
You can do it either one,
Who's
Dan.
his parent?
Or
Cynthia.
find somebody
I'd
else.
probably
Son.
do something else.
Is that
If I'm gonna teach the class.
That's great.
Okay, fine,
And it was better if you started, because you're gonna teach
That's great.
okay.
I know.
What's his
Yeah, I
first
made a
name?
lot of notes.
Okay,
He
he was in the Navy?
Well, we'll
Yes.
pass out the questions anyway.
Well,
it. Well, wait a
good.
minute. Harry missing next.
How's he
week,
doing
too.
out of the Navy?
He's okay, you know.
Save.
Cause they'll give you 2
How
weeks
old would he be?
to read the
He's 3
recommended
years older than you.
chapters from Job.
47?
His birthday is August, so he'll be 47.
Take one pass.
Yeah, do whatever you want.
You're 47, Michelle.
This is young.
There you go.
That's great. Where does he normally attend?
I told him to go to North Shore because he could walk over there, you know, walk Keegan. And they did want him there, but he
Do we
decided to
need
go
more?
down the street to it's another church.
Okay,
Because they
Did
have
some-
some Bible study. I don't know, he
okay,
hopped
thank
around,
you.
so,
So he's
Did
in
you get-
Waukegan.
yeah, he lives in Washington.
They're going around.
Okay. I guess
Yeah.
we'll-
That's way up there.
Thank you for your attention.
Well, he's trying to get himself together.
So how did, well, let, no, how they just because it's, they know, but that's.
They were gonna have because and me,
Let's save this kid.
and, so they gave him a chance, you know, they looked at his lesson first.
Okay.
And, he did good.
That's great.
Bye.
That might be really good for him.
Yeah,
All right.
he wants to preach.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Wow. I mean, do your brothers influence him at all?
My one work was, but his church is in
Remember
Indiana,
the lesson
and,
of the fiddler on the roof?
he
The first son married a kind of a dope, but he was a Jew, that's okay.